let's start from the top. I think that right now there is a pervasive narrative, let's say from the coastal elites, the New York Times, the credential class, Davos, WEF, whatever you want to use as the proxy. Coming out of that world, we're hearing things like use less energy, track your carbon credits, don't do this, don't fly a plane, don't eat meat. We got to reduce our energy. Okay, this is my belief, this comes out of a neo Malthusian fear. And Malthus was an economist in England, and he was looking at biological systems, and he realized that if you have a bunch of deer, I'm making up an example, if you have a bunch of deer on an island and there's X amount of grass on the island, eventually the deer's population will grow so much that they'll consume all the food and then all the deer will die. And he just took that premise, charted how ecological systems work, and then he said, look, humans population is growing too fast. Eventually we're going to exceed our carrying capacity and we're all going to die. So we need to slow down population growth. And Malthus was wrong, and he's wrong because he did not account for the fact that we are not mindless deer. We are problem solvers who create tools, and we have the capacity through technology to increase our species carrying capacity on the planet, right? If we were all pastoralists, there wouldn't be that many people on the planet because we'd all need a few acres to get by. But no, we figured out ways to have harness more dense energy, to employ machines to do our work, to get more yield per acre of farmland, right? We fertilizers. We've come up with all these technologies to do more with less, and that allows our population to grow. And the idea that we've hit the maximum carrying capacity, will never come up with new technology to make us expand our carrying capacity today, and so we got to reduce now, is totally nuts. I think it's bad thinking. I think it's rooted in an ideological boogeyman that doesn't actually exist. I also think that certain powers that be might be using that to hijack the conversation and hijack the masses, because it's a very seductive idea that we're breaking the planet, and all we got to do is get taxed more and eat the bugs and live in the pod, and then the government will change the weather. This is crazy. And I think that, I don't want to get down the climate change route, but it's for sure being used as a tool of control, and that's a bad thing. And so I think that's generally the context we're in here. Now, I think the way around this is to look at facts and data, and like, what's the reality here? And the reality is that humans harnessing energy is what makes us flourish. It's it's the highest correlation to human success, human achievement, is how much energy does a population harness. And so all the good things we like about society are downstream of harnessing energy. Energy is the master commodity. It makes all our goods cheaper. It makes us warm in the winter and cold in the summer. It makes us have food and medicine. And if your kid's born prematurely, we can put them in an incubator so they survive, because we have enough power near the hospital to achieve that, and millions of other examples. And so it's my belief that we need to totally retake over this narrative around energy. We're not running out. That's nonsense. We capture like 0.00001% of the sunlight that hits our planet. So we have a long ways to go. We've never consumed less energy. You look at the chart, we come up with new energy sources. We just add them on. We have an unlimited demand for energy. That's the reality. And so we're not going to stop that. And if you want to stop that, sure, we can go back to, I don't know, 500 million people and live like nomadic pastoralists, and like die from all these preventable things, and just like generally have a lower quality of life. We could do that as a species, theoretically. But if you want to get rid of fossil fuels, we're getting rid of all the modern amenities that we like. And so it's not actually a tenable path. There's no political will for this. And if one country does it, they're just committing suicide for their country, and the next country will gladly consume all their energy. And so I think the reality is that we want more energy, more widely distributed across the planet at a lower cost. And if you actually care about humanitarian efforts, that's probably the single most important thing you can do. It's like, make people not poor. And one way to do that is to give them low cost energy, because that everything downstream of low cost energy increases human flourishing. So that's my slight rant there. How does this intersect with Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin miners are a unique consumer of energy. And what they're unique for is because they can go where the energy source is. That's one thing. So they can move wherever you are. And if you look around the world, energy is not globally fungible. If I'm in the middle of Iceland and I have geothermal energy in the ground and no one's nearby, that energy is not worth anything because there's no consumers, right? So you could build expensive transmission lines and ship that energy to a population center. Very expensive, takes years to build out. Maybe we'll do that, maybe not. What if you have remote hydro in the middle of the mountains in some remote area in Africa and there's no population nearby? No one's buying the energy, so it's worth nothing. And so essentially these Bitcoin miners are able to locate on site wherever energy could be harnessed, and then they buy that energy immediately. And if all of a sudden a population center builds up around that energy source and an end user consumer or a hospital is willing to buy that energy at a higher cost, they're going to outcompete the Bitcoin miners because the Bitcoin miners can only take the lowest cost energy on our planet. And so you add up all these incentives, and what it looks like is Bitcoin miners incentivize generating net new energy assets. And in some cases, Bitcoin miners are the single reason an energy project got off the ground instead of died on the vine. So if you look in, let's say, rural Africa, I think this is an example that's showing some fruit right now. Companies like Gridless are harnessing these incentives to bring energy to the most remote places on the continent. And okay, why isn't there energy there now? Well, because the main grids in Africa, it's not cost effective for them to run transmission lines out to the middle of nowhere. And so they'll never do it. It will be a losing enterprise. No capital will form to achieve that. Then you say, well, what about nonprofits? What about government agencies? Sometimes they help out here. But the reality is, if there's no ROI on a project, it's hard to get funding for things. Those take years and they're not getting the job done. Enter Bitcoin miners. Okay, so all of a sudden you want to raise money to set up a microgrid in the middle of nowhere. Well, the population nearby isn't big enough necessarily to buy enough energy to see an ROI on the energy asset, which means the energy asset never gets produced, which means they never have energy. Enter Bitcoin miners. You can go tap a micro hydro dam in the middle of nowhere, and whatever the local consumers don't purchase, the Bitcoin miners will purchase. And so what does that do? That makes their energy asset profitable immediately, or at least on a reasonable time frame, which leads to more incentive to invest. So the net here is that Bitcoin miners will bring more energy online in areas where it might not have been economical prior, which literally spreads prosperity around the globe. And there's no subsidy involved here. There's no NGO involved here. It's literally market forces who will do this profit motivated today, and it's happening all over the world. And the positive externality is human flourishing, more energy, raising people out of poverty. That's a beautiful thing. And I think it's not easy to grapple with these ideas. I think energy is widely misunderstood. And so it's taken some time, I would say, for a culture to accept these things. Most Bitcoiners 5 years ago had no clue about any of this stuff, never saw it coming, never studied energy. And we're obviously the first ones to grapple with this thing because we're obsessed with Bitcoin and whatever. But I think the powers that be, the journalists, they're starting to realize that they can't use lazy narratives anymore because they're just wrong. So yeah, we're starting to see a shift in this exact narrative in the media, and it's still a tiny understanding, like most people have no clue, but we're starting to see a shift. And shout out to all the people that have worked really hard to make these organizations understand what's going on. But we're making progress here. More energy, more flourishing. This is the way.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.